Central as the education partner. And for the last 2 years, I just love this Asia Society Theater, and to be able to host talks like this, and also kind of share with friends. In fact, I think the only new friend is Özge, but the others are all friends from years of collaboration. So it's really, I'm delighted to be moderating the session. And we want to talk about small talks, but actually small talks on a big subject, not-for-profit in arts. And I don't know if, before coming back to Hong Kong about 10 years ago, I was working in New York for about 10 years. And Özge, you have some experience in New York as well. And I know, Antony, you work with the British Council, and I think Tiffany as well with Sovereign Art Foundation, and the importance of nonprofit in the arts in New York, in London, and you're seeing it here in Hong Kong as well. And I think our institutions, I think, represents that development. And today we're going to talk about that, and we're also going to talk about how we're going to grow with this, with M+. Asia Society Hong Kong is celebrating 10th year anniversary in our site. Although we've been around since 1990, our center in Admiralty is celebrating 10 years. And your institution, Asian Art Archive, has been 22 years. And Sovereign is also a major anniversary.
Yeah, coming 19 years.
19 years, okay. And then, and I think, Antony, your organization is how many years?
Since 1986.
86. So you can see the development of these nonprofit organizations. We've been growing with the arts community, and I think people now talk about M+, and then in a few weeks we will have the Hong Kong Palace Museum opening. Dai Gun opened about 4 or 5 years ago, and then PMQ. I mean, if we look at the cultural institutions. So, and one of the things I kind of want us to talk about is, give us an idea of each of your cultural institution, your history, and then later on we can delve into this last 2+ years of challenges because of the pandemic and all that. But let's start with Antony. Tell us about your organization, because you just joined your organization, but the organization, like you said, has been around for over since 1986, and so I would love to hear more about what you're trying to do, and talk about the history of your organization, the disabilities, supporting disability in the arts.
Great. Right. I joined the Arts with the Disabilities Association Hong Kong about 4 months ago. So the organization is about promoting inclusive art and promoting inclusive society through the arts with people of all different abilities. So we provide training and workshops and forum and festivals and different platforms for people to showcase the artistic talent, as well as giving them a chance to learn from each other and to promote a better society that we can work and live together. So we're very unique in a sense that we work across different disabilities, and we also work across different art forms. So we don't just do performing arts or visual arts. So it's all inclusive. So we also do provide accessibility services, so that we are not only working with people with disabilities, but also people who care for them, who want to know more about what inclusive art is all about. So we were established in 1986, so we've been around over 30 years now. And what we are trying to do is to get more and more people and the society in general to understand what inclusive art is all about, and why people should have equal access to the creation and the appreciation of art. So I guess that's about it as a beginning. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Antony. But I think you brought up a very good point. I think sometimes with art fair and with museums, we think art is what's hung on the walls, and we think art is a very elite, it's for the collectors or for people who can afford it. But you bring out a point that art is for everyone, including the disabled, and I think your organization have done some great work. It's also collaborative, right? Art can be also, in this time of pandemic, I find art can be quite healing. So I think what your organization is something an organization we work with and I've long admired. But AAA, Asia Art Archive, has really grown, and we share some of the same parentage. Some of our members and supporters, as also were founders of AAA. And Özge, you've been with AAA for a few years, but you have experiences in Turkey as well as in New York. And tell us about yourself and also AAA.
Of course, thank you so much, Alice, for this invitation, and Art Central for hosting us. I just want to say, to echo what Anthony, you were saying, collaboration and accessibility, these are also very main values for Asia Art Archive. And for those of you who are less familiar with Asia Art Archive, we are an independent, not-for-profit organization that started in the year of 2000. So we've been around for 22 years. And since the very beginning, what we try to do is to create knowledge and share knowledge as freely as possible, as sustainably as possible, I would say benefiting as many people as possible. And we do this in different ways. For those of you who live in Hong Kong, I hope you will have a chance to come and visit our library. We have an on-site library that's open to public 6 days a week that we've been having for the last 22 years. And also we have archival collections that are all accessible online. So it's something that's very foundational for our organization. Not only have the resources for artists, for researchers, for scholars, for educators who are based in Hong Kong, but we are really interested in making these connections back across different types of art communities across Asia. I would say that these are the most foundational resources that we provide. But maybe one thing that I can add is that it's very important for us that we are not a static archive that would be waiting for future researchers or future visitors to come and to use us, but we actively work with artists, we actively work with researchers, and we do this through exhibitions, through talks, symposium, and the residency programs and the educational programs as well.
Great. One thing about AAA that I admire is you guys are not just here in Hong Kong, but you also have a presence in New York and also a presence in India. Asia Society also have presence there. But what I found interesting when I was working in New York is just that art is everywhere. You have the Met, you have the MoMA, and you have a lot of big museums, been around, some of them been around 100, 150 years in the case of the Met. But often I would go to some of the museums, and this was around 2003 till when I left in 2011. Rarely do you see that many Asian artists, and if you do, it's the Met is more the older, collections and so on. But I found what AAA has been doing is really the voice, kind of showcasing the voice of Asian or Asian American artists, or just so that New York knows that Asia, not only is it growing economically, but creatively, culturally as well. So I really applaud the work that AAA has done, not just in Hong Kong, but also outside of Hong Kong. But now, Tiffany, old friend Tiffany, Pinkstone, Tiffany Sovereign Art Foundation has been also affiliated with Art Central for many years. You have a booth back there. And you have, one of the things I've always admired about the Sovereign Art Fund, you also do a lot of work with young people, also with the community, but you also, again, focus on the Asian emerging artists. Every year, your fundraiser, you really focus on them and help launch many of their careers. So tell us more about, kind of the Sovereign Foundation, Arts Foundation.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. And again, thank you for having us here, and thanks to Art Central as well for hosting us. And yeah, I guess the Sovereign Art Foundation almost spans across sort of a bit of both of what Asia Art Archive and Art for Disabilities does. So we, I guess we have twin aims. So one of those is to highlight Asian artists. And when we did start in 2003, so almost 20 years ago, much like everybody else, the art scene here in Hong Kong was sort of fairly limited. And one of the aims that we had was really to also try and highlight and bring Asian art to the forefront in Hong Kong. So that's why we came up with the Asian Art Prize. And with that, we work with nominators and curators from all over the region. They nominate artists into the prize, and therefore sort of trying to track sort of some of the best artists from around the region and giving them a platform here in Hong Kong to be seen and as you say, to hopefully launch sort of, some of their careers as well. part of that and sort of is that the fundraising part where we sell the artworks, that goes into our children's programs. So with that, we work with a lot of children in Hong Kong specifically, as well as we've done projects around the region. But it's about using expressive arts as a way to help the children. It's about helping them build confidence. It's about helping them to sort of be able to communicate. It's about helping them and giving them a voice in a non-judgmental area. And as you say, sort of, you know, especially with the period we've just been through, it kind of really highlights how important art can be to help people through a process. So a lot of the children that we work with are have sort of behavioral issues. A lot of them are sort of special educational needs children, and that's what we do to try to bring arts a little bit more into the forefront and using it as a way to help them.
Now I kind of want to talk about a little bit of what we've been through. This last 2 years, plus years, this pandemic has really hit us really hard. And those of you who are not familiar with not-for-profit, running a non-for-profit, like any organization or like any company, you know, you need funds. I mean, not-for-profit, sometimes, you know, we're able to get grants from Jockey Club, which has been generous to many of our organizations, foundations, private donations, corporate sponsors. I mean, you know, without monetary support and without the staffing we have, we cannot do what we do, like any nonprofit. So we have been hit really hard this last 2 years because in our case, you know, we've been shut down since, I think I calculated since February, beginning of pandemic until April, we were closed 247 days in that 2 years, 2+ years, and funding suffered. We also ran our facility out, so we couldn't do that. So I know we all have suffered tremendously, and I know some of us have gotten grants from the government, from Arts Development Council, which we're very grateful, and as well as Jockey Club and so on. But how have you guys managed in this last 2 years? It's been very difficult, and not just for us, I think all of the nonprofits around the world, but here in Hong Kong, because we're not, our roots is not that long. I mean, the Met has been around 150 years. They have a lot of people on Wall Street, but here, our institutions here in Hong Kong, we're only, you know, 86, and we do have loyal supporters, but it's been a very unusual. You know, first of all, the social protests also affected some of us. So in some ways, 3 years of being hindered by that. So how have each of you dealt with it? And I'm going to start off with AAA and then work that way.
Of course.
Okay.
I think I would agree with you. You know, it was really about survival when it comes to the financial sustainability. As the Asia Art Archive team, we were very lucky to be able to keep the staff, the team members employed and continue the work that they do. And I believe that the way that we are organized, because we are digitally driven, especially with these archival materials, resources, the collections that we have accessible online, we kept working on them. So one major part of the work, it really continued. But when it comes to programs, we also had to pivot, of course. If I can give 2 examples, for instance, 2 recent examples. When it comes to the international program, we started a program called Art Schools of Asia, which is a research program with a cohort of 18 emerging art historians, and they come from 18 different countries. So we had to basically have these organize these monthly meetings, monthly seminars with them since October, and we still continue. And they all come from 18 different time zones. So actually, the pandemic time was an opportunity for us to bring these people that we wouldn't be able to bring together. Maybe we could have them, let's say, for a week in Hong Kong, but having the sustained conversation, which really helped us to think about, you know, what could be the hybrid models that we can explore in the future. And if I can give an example from Hong Kong, we have a really close connection with a group of secondary school teachers in Hong Kong, and we asked them, we were not able to get together with them, but we said that we are here to support you, what can we do for you? And they said that they are really struggling in the classroom when it comes to students staying at home and engaging these students through computers. So we actually basically reach out to a number of Hong Kong-based artists and also international artists to commission them artist exercises or exercises that are created by artists for these secondary school teachers for them to use in the classroom. So there are these two different ways that we try to pivot our programs, but I would say that our opportunity or our luxury, I would say, is that the website remains the main resource, and we still had around 15,000 visitors for the website per month. So in this sense, we were very happy to be able to continue what we are able to do.
Great. I think that's really wonderful to hear. And I think for us at Asia Society as well, we became more a global organization because we have centers besides Hong Kong, 13 other centers. And because of the time difference, we can do programs with our other centers in a way that very creatively and getting a global audience. But that takes a lot of work. But we all had to pivot, and we all had to be creative, and we are in the creative industry, so we somehow manage. But Tiffany, how have you guys survived this last 2 years?
Yeah, I think much like everybody else, financially it's been difficult. I mean, we've been able to keep our head above water, but you know, one of the biggest impacts for us has definitely been fundraising. It's, you know, that lack of being able to have a gala and getting everybody into a room, doing those donation drives. I mean, that all really just disappeared, and now it's really about trying to get more one-on-one. It's much harder now to try to do that fundraising. From a workshop perspective, it was also difficult. A lot of the children that we work with, they do, you know, they do come from low-income backgrounds. So in order to just suddenly turn digital, I mean, first of all, we all had to work out how to do that because, you know, I guess Zoom and stuff, that didn't even really exist before the pandemic. So, you know, it was trying to work out how to do the lessons online and the workshops that we have online, but how to give care towards the children that we work with, because that's difficult to do online. A lot of the families, they don't have the technology either. So, you know, they might be sharing a phone, or they might be sharing one laptop with 3 kids all trying to work out their own timetables. We tried to deliver kits, tried to promote working, so adults, the parents and the children working together to create things. So we'd maybe put a little instructional video together, deliver the kits. So it was also to promote bonding between the parents and the children during these difficult times. Everybody's stuck in a small, you know, sort of environment, and they can't get out. So it's about trying to give them something to do. During this latest 5th wave and sort of the schools closing, we tried to also distribute art kits with rat tests. We thought try to make that whole experience a little bit more pleasant for the families, and also give these kids something to do when suddenly they had, you know, school holidays thrown upon them that were completely sort of, you know, unexpected. So yeah, it's been tough, but as I say, we all tried to do our best to pivot and find the best ways to serve our community and our beneficiaries.
Great. And Antony, I mean, you work with the disabled, and I think Tiffany already touched upon the disparities. I mean, just because everybody has a phone and technology doesn't mean everybody has the same bandwidth and or 5Gs or whatever, right? So, and when you're working with the disabilities, again, very difficult. It was already difficult under normal circumstances, but during this COVID, during the pandemic, how have your organization, you know, adapted to serve your community better?
Right. I think to start with, we just have to be really flexible and not to be afraid to learn something new and learn it very quickly. Trial and error is sort of like the approach that we adopted. Especially for some of the disabled artists or people with disabilities, try to learn about art, or we give them workshops and we give them different exercises to do online. I think both hardware and software imposed a challenge to them, because sometimes they need sign language interpretation, and then we have to put that in place, and it takes a lot of planning to do that. And I want to talk a little bit more about the NGO itself. What COVID has given us a lot of challenges as well, because ADA is not government subvented organization. So we actually get funding from different funders to support programs. because of COVID, so the programs are delayed or postponed. It's fine with them for us to do it, say maybe to stretch a program from 18 months to 24 months, but they would not cover the staff costs. So basically, we have to find our ways to generate different income or revenue to support our staff costs. But with programs being delayed, you don't have a lot of programs to actually fundraise because you have nothing new to fundraise for the cost incurred by the COVID. So that is a very very challenging on the financial side. And we also learned something that we need to take care of people's well-being, both people with disabilities or just staff, because they got discouraged and they got kind of upset sometimes to make so many different scenarios, so many different contingency plans, and actually at the end of it, nothing worked out. So we have to kind of take care of the human side of the business as well. Yeah, we are still learning how to cope with it because we are not actually done with COVID yet, but we are learning with it, we are growing with it because, well, it's not going to go away.
Well, I think you have a very interesting point there, Anthony, I want to kind of share with everyone too. And I think when we do fundraising in our field, a lot of corporates or individuals say, oh, they won't cover operations, right? That's always something that many of the donors said, they do not cover operations. And that's fine and good, you know, if the operations can be taken by grants. Remember, nonprofit, you need money from, like I said, corporate sponsors, individuals, private, foundations is also very helpful, and sometimes government. So I kind of this three-legged stool. But when you don't have one or the other during the pandemic, I feel like we're wobbly. And I think the fifth wave, when what Tiffany said is so true, many of the corporates, many of our partners have come to us and said, can you help us deliver programming online for our community? We're happy to do that. But there's no money to pay for the staffing. So I think right now in Hong Kong, it's great to have M+, great to have the physical buildings, and we have a beautiful building. Don't knock it when you know, but you need people to run it, right? You need the soft power, software, and sometimes, you know, whenever we're fundraising, so I just want to, if anybody out there is listening, online or here, you need people to run organizations like a company, right? And even though people are working from home, they're still working, right? And in many ways, we've all had to adapt. So that's an area where I kind of want to not challenge, but I tell that story, because without the people, and I have to say all of our staff, we did not fire anyone. They, in fact, kind of come in even more dedicated and had to be more creative. I know we've asked our staff, and they're the one that helped put together this program together. You know, so I think that's an area where we sometimes forget that, you know, once you have a building, things runs, but it's the people behind it, right? So, but how has there been challenging in terms of staffing challenges in during this time for you all, and now? Also, people are leaving, and there's been a lot of, I know in our organization, there's been a lot of changes on the staffing side, and also part of the issue is the growth of our arts and cultural ecosystem. I know I have former staff who have joined Daegun, M+, West Kowloon, and other cultural institutions. So are you guys also seeing challenges of retaining good staff? Tiffany.
Thank you. I actually just want to reiterate what you said in terms of the funding for staff, because it is something difficult. I'm not sure where people think these programs come from without having the staff to run them. So it's just kind of...
AI doesn't work yet.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it is, you know, we always try to encourage and grateful for all unrestricted type of funding, you know, where we can produce all the reports that you want in terms of where the money's gone, but, you know, if we've got that flexibility on how to use the funds, that's always really helpful from a sort of recipient point of view. In terms of staffing, we've been pretty lucky. I mean, we've got a pretty small, tight team, so there's not been that much movement there. But also the way that we've structured our workshops is quite flexible, so it allows us to scale up or scale down whenever we need to. So we rely on a lot of project workers and freelancers, and that's what I think has helped us quite a bit, having that model in terms of COVID times. So, you know, we can go up and down quite quickly in terms of being able to produce workshops and staff. So for us, we've been okay, I think, but yeah.
Anthony?
Well, staffing has always been difficult in the art sector, I think, in Hong Kong, especially NGO art sector. A lot of us are underpaid, and it's very difficult to keep staff to be committed in doing what they do. So we have to give them something extra, like in terms of just financial remuneration. What else can we give them? So it's the aspiration of working in art, the intangible benefit of getting inside with the art and getting to know the people, knowing the sector. That's important. I think under COVID is even more challenging because the projects, sometimes they are shrinking and they are delayed, and then we just don't have enough money to keep the staff on the project because we just don't have money to pay the salary. So that is challenging, and that actually keeps the turnover pretty high, and it kills the morale of the staff as well. So there's a lot of damage that we have to sort of reprimand after the peak, and now we're trying to grow the staff morale again. Yeah.
Okay.
When it comes to Asia Art Archive, I could say that we are a mid-scale organization, so we have around 30 people working in Hong Kong and around 5 people working in Delhi in India. And for us, I could not agree more with you, Alice. I mean, the team is the most important part of the organization, for sure. So similarly, we had to scale down on certain programs. Perhaps we had to cancel certain things, but we really prioritized to keep the team in place. And we had to somehow scale down and slow down at the same time. One thing that I could share is that was just one very, very nice opportunity for us because we had to slow down for certain programs. We basically had the opportunity to come together and to think about our on-site space, our library. And we said that if we are given the chance to renovate the library or expand the library, how could we change it? So we had those conversations, workshops with the team, and in the end, we are very, very happy that we are actually renovating the library, expanding the library, and we really welcome to all of you to join us in September, which is the opening of the new space. So it came with a lot of challenges, the pandemic period, but it also has given us a lot of opportunities in that sense.
Great, great. I think opportunities are yeah, I think this is one thing I have learned from this experience. There have been a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities. And one of the things I have to say I've been so touched is really by how resilient, this is my favorite word, resilient the community is. We currently have an exhibition at Asia Society, photography from 1940s, post-war Hong Kong to 1970. And the name of the show is called Recovery, Resilience, and Resurgence. And I think the title is reflective of also what's happening here in Hong Kong as well. And the resilience of this city is something that I'm in awe of, having been here 10 years this time, 11 years previously, and in between 9 years in New York. So I think the community is something I've come to admire greatly. I mean, I'm talking about the local community, I'm talking about the expatriate community, I'm talking about, you know, Hong Kong in general, you know, so. And also I think there's a photo here of Mila, the domestic helper community. We have a film coming up, I think Sarah's working on in June, that also will profile the work of the domestic helpers. So I think the community itself has gone through a lot. But I think right now one of the things I want to ask each of you is your work, your definition of community, and how have you been able to connect during this time, and how would you, after this, would like to connect more with the community in the work that you do? Have we kind of now using technology or using you're right, we still need people, I think, is more than ever, I think, because especially when we've gone through the fifth wave, the song, People Who Need People are the happiest people, that song, that lyric has been in my head ever since, because people do need people, right? So how do you relate to the community as we evolve and as we kind of learn from this pandemic? And it's not just us, it's globally, but how have we as a community learned from that? So, Anthony, can I ask you?
Sure. We work very closely with people with disabilities, and particularly the artists with disabilities. So we're always trying to connect with them in all levels, in professionally and personally as well. So during this time, I think whatever is digital, that we make the best use of it, and to get the artists to be interested, to be engaged in the technology and work with it. I think one of the aspirations I have in future is not only to just showcase the art digitally, but encourage the artists to make art with digital means, with technology. Because a lot of people think disabled artists, they are disadvantaged, and they do not know about technology, they can't create anything digitally, and that's a misconception. That's not necessarily true. So I think I want to kind of do a program to actually encourage people with different abilities to come together on a digital or technology platform to create and to appreciate each other. So to use that not only as a tool, but also as a platform to connect with people. I haven't had any idea how to do it yet, but if you guys do, let me know so we could maybe co-create something together. Yeah, that would be one of my plans in the coming times. Yeah.
I would love to see disabled people creating NFTs. Right now, yeah. I'm sure we've all heard about it, and in a way, not knowing. But I think you're right about the technology. It is out there, and I think the creativity, it's really up to the artist, whether it's disabled or not. But that's a really great challenge. But I think on this AAA, in terms of community, you like us, you also have a global and local. But can you talk more about that?
Of course, I think similar to your organizations, we also had to keep the ties with our communities, especially in Hong Kong, through digital means. Sometimes they led to certain programs, sometimes they just kept at the, let's say, smaller meeting levels. But one thing that I can share from the Asia Art Archive's perspective is that we keep learning from artists themselves. So for the last 2 years, we have been organizing these series of conversations with artists who lead educational models, and we've been really getting inspired by them. These are people who set up their own schools, people who have been changing certain structures in the university that they teach with. So one of the main lessons that we learned from them is that in times of crises like this, like the health crisis, perhaps it's okay to scale down, slow down, meet in very small groups, but keep the conversation going.
Right.
Perhaps we wouldn't be able to do large-scale events where we could really enjoy and celebrate the community like we are doing today. But it was really important to think about the scale and the small gatherings and the importance of the sustainability of these small gatherings. And it's definitely something that we keep learning from artists themselves.
I want to echo what you said so much, because sometimes, not just here in Hong Kong, I think in New York, big cities, sometimes it's always these big events that people are attracted to. But I actually think small is better, and you learn. And I often talk to our staff, let's pilot it. Like, if it works, let's grow. If it doesn't, we try something else. But small, and Hong Kong, I often think of Hong Kong as a small town in a big city. Because if you think about the nonprofit sector and the cultural sector, we all kind of know everyone. We all are seeing each other, and that, I think that's actually good for growing arts and cultural. We don't have a lot of the baggages of a big city. I know when I was working in New York, you have the big cultural institution who often was accused of sucking up all of the funding and support, and the smaller institution has to rely on the city or government funding. So there was kind of this two universe. Whereas here in Hong Kong, I find that we have one growing arts and cultural universe, and we generally really support each other because we're so new. So I think that community, that spirit is something that I have to say we have here in droves. And universities are now training. In fact, our contributor, Rancy, is going to be graduating from CUHK, Cultural Management, and this is a great experience for her to help us put together this program. Thank you, Rancy, for your great work. But the schools are also part of this community. So can you maybe also, I think Tiffany talked about the teachers, right? You know, even secondary school. I mean, so I think we need to celebrate that. I think we need to celebrate the smallness, and not everything has to be big and attract thousands or millions of people. We have a core. I find that the artists here are really creative. The heart, they have the heart, and each of our organizations are working with them. So I guess now I want to talk about the artists. The Sovereign Art Foundation, you guys have some of the work I've seen from the Asian artists has been just really, really great. I mean, but you often don't see it in big cities yet in New York and London, and I think they will, thanks to our fairs like this. So how about, talk about your work with the artists. How do you inspire them? How do you encourage them? Because I think sometimes the artists, they're not all necessarily driven by money. I mean, sure, they need to survive to sell their artwork, and I think that's commercialism in art is nothing wrong with it. But some of them are about the community, about the creative process. How do you, and Sovereign, you guys do a great job of doing it. How do you continue to motivate and select and keep them going?
Yeah, to be honest, it's something that we revise every year. So we've been running the Art Prize for this is our 18th edition this year, and we really go back. We have a great, David Elliott sits as our chief advisor, and he's just been so instrumental in terms of helping us drive it forward and refine it year on year, because also the art landscape changes, right? When we started, we were a painting only prize, and then I remember when it was suggested we took on photography, it was such a like, oh, how are we going to deal with that, you know, because at that time, photography was known more as journalistic type of photography as opposed as an art form. How do you deal with editions? How do you sell photography? You know, it was all those questions. So you constantly have to keep evolving with the landscape. We're great that we've got such great nominators that come from around the region. And to be honest, going back to what you were saying earlier about, you know, so many different time zones and people everywhere, this is where I think these pandemic times have really helped us, and the use of technology, because before we never thought about having these big, you know, well, not big, but again, smaller scale, but symposiums where we could communicate with our nominators. And I think we are communicating with our nominators a lot more. They're the ones that are actively helping us find the artists and speaking to the artists, encouraging them to enter in. And now we've got opportunities where we can be communicating with them, get to know them, because you're having more video calls with them. We're doing sort of talks where we're talking about what our aims are so that they understand better where we're coming from the Sovereign Art Foundation. It's not just sending them an email, giving them some guidelines and hoping for the best. So we've been able to be a lot more engaged with them, and it's really through their nominations that really help us with the Art Prize. But I mean, if you come and have a look, you know, we've got some great artworks from Iran this year. We've got Uzbekistan. We've got a great, stunning piece from Uzbekistan. And it's always so exciting getting the finalists in, because we don't have any sort of, we're not part of the judging process. So it's just waiting to see sort of who are going to be our top 30 finalists. And then we bring them all into Hong Kong, and that unboxing day where we're uncrating sort of all the works is one of the most exciting days of the year. Having a look at the artworks and just seeing that diverse cross-section. And it is, especially some of these areas like from Central Asia, where you just don't usually get to see those kinds of work. So yeah, it's very exciting every year, sure.
And I think you touch upon something that I think my friends in the States sometimes are amazed at, you know, the crowds that sometimes come to the art fair, the Art Basel or Art Central. And it's because we haven't, until recently, had the big museum like the M Plus and all that. And the galleries have done a great job. I know the Hong Kong Art Gallery Association has some wonderful work. They're also doing an auction. And also I want to shout out to the Made in Hong Kong section in this year in Art Central. Again, profiling 65, I think, chosen from 650, as I recall, Hong Kong artists. Some of them have no representation, and they're just Hong Kong artists. So definitely that section is not to be missed. So the artist is here, right? So now it's really up to us as an organization to kind of help promote them and really work. They're very much encourage them in this time, because I'm sure it's also very difficult for artists to be selling their work. Although they have a lot of time to create, I'm sure, but it's been, I'm sure it's difficult as well. But now I want to kind of touch a bit about another exciting things I also see here in Hong Kong, and I don't know if maybe each of you can talk. It's really the kind of the mixing of the medium of, like you said, it used to be just art on the wall or photography, but now you're seeing also kind of co-creation, whether it's music, art. I think some of it you're seeing it in NFT space, but is that an area where you guys are also looking into in terms of site-specific art, performances, all of that? That's the kind of this melting of the mediums. It used to be performing arts and visual arts, two separate worlds, but now there seems to be this coming together. Is that something you guys are also looking into, Anthony?
Yeah, definitely. I think for artists that we work with, the artists with different abilities, it all started, we take a step back by looking at how we provide the training to them to actually appreciate how they could meld together different forms of art and to kind of create something new. Definitely that is a good space, like for people and for artists to develop. NFT is another buzzword, and everybody wants to kind of work in that space. I think that is the trend. We don't categorize art anymore, whether it's disabled or abled art. Just to look at the creativity, the energy that artists could put into it, and then the sky is the limit. We don't define what genre of art is going to be. So, but I think, especially for the artists that we work with, it's important to provide the environment to nurture them, because it doesn't come naturally to everybody. So I think we need to kind of give them the nutrients and the encouragement, also training, working with the masters, getting like overseas master classes and training, as well as local ones, for them to experiment with their art. Yeah.
Anything you want to?
Sure. So I should say that artists are really foundational for the work that we do. And mainly there are two ways that we engage with artists. The first one is for the research collections or the archival collections that we have. So if you go to our website, most of the materials that you will see, these are actually coming from the personal archives of artists. And perhaps these are artists that are not necessarily conventionally successful in the world. I would say only about the market or the visibility. But these artists, they really wear different hats. They are educators, they are curators, they are organizers, they set up schools, they are active in schools. So in that terms, when you look at the materials, you not only see the evolution of these artists, but you really see the evolution of different scenes, be it literature, be it theater, or be it performance art that they've been engaged in. So that idea of community is something that, again, we really learn from the artists themselves. And if I can give an example about the second way that we engage with artists, is that we really try to engage them with the work that we do at the level of the archive. Because for some of the people, archive is something that's quite abstract, maybe it's a little bit distant, but that's also how we basically invite artists to come and think with us about different communities that we can reach to. One example is the Habik Chun archive, the late Habik Chun archive that we worked on, and for a residency program we invited Jia Yufai, who's a lyricist, who's very much involved in pop music in Hong Kong, but who's also a scholar and an educator. And he collaborated with Sophie Wong, the singer, and they basically interpreted some of the archival materials and really thought about what it means to connect, with the community through these archival materials that we are looking at. So in that sense, interdisciplinary ways of working, it's definitely something that we are hoping to work on more.
that's really close to my heart. It's about storytelling. And archive, to me, is kind of like a soul to a city or because, I think we are kind of behind here in Hong Kong. My understanding is on archival laws, but to have, your organization dedicating to archive, it's really we all have photo albums, that have generations of it, and it is something that's quite important. It's part of our, whether it's in the attic or not, but it is art. But you guys are making active use of the archive so that young people, artists, okay. If not, I'm going to keep on asking. I have these days who are interested in doing what we do. How would you advise them if they're interested to work in nonprofits in art? I mean, we're not here for the money, but and parents sometimes are encouraging, and in fact, I think in many of the Asian parents' power is changing. There is a avenue in, if you're an artist, sell your work, but we're not selling work. We're running nonprofits, and in fact, my father is so cute. My father passed away last year, unfortunately, but I remember when I was working for the Museum of Chinese in America in Chinatown in New York. And he was so concerned about me, and he said my father actually calculated the entry ticket of the museum, which at that time was $10 per person or something like that. And he did the numbers, and afterwards said, and we had a staff of about 12 people, and he was really concerned at my age, how can this museum, tiny little museum in Chinatown, feeds you? And my father was so worried. And he said, you have an MBA, you graduated from college. Why are you working in Chinatown, this museum? I'm not even working in a Chinese restaurant. My father was a chef, so we knew we could make money in a Chinese restaurant. But you're working in a museum that's charging $10 a day. And he was actually calculating how many people that came in, right? So he was really concerned about my future. And I finally had to, how I convinced him was one year, our gala dinner, I invited him. And he sat at the gala, and we raised some major money there. And that's when he stopped worrying about me. And I said, my dad, one of the things I can do well, and I enjoy doing, is development work, fundraising. So we get money not just from selling tickets to come to the museum. Part of my work is also development. So young people, it's not just convincing the young people, but also convincing their parents that there is a future in what we do. So what advice would you give to them, the kids, and or the parents?
Wow, that's a big one. It's you've got a perfect example here with Rainsy, right? Who's just about to graduate, and she's getting this great experience with you. So she's getting sort of an insight sort of before she makes her next steps in terms of what she's going to be doing. I mean, it's about being passionate, but I think it's also such a great training ground. You learn everything, and one of the things is working for a not-profit is that you have to be really resourceful, right? We don't have the same budgets that sort of corporations have. That, it always. You see these big companies with these big budgets, and you think, well, you can literally do anything you want. But I feel like, when you're working for something like a not-profit, you have to be creative, you have to be resourceful, and I feel like it's just great experience as well. And I think sort of, the difference with working for a not-for-profit as opposed to sort of a big corporation is also just that satisfaction. You're also, everything you're doing, it's for the greater good. And, we're all working for different not-for-profits, but we all have the same aim at the end of the day, and that's really to just, make things better. So, yeah. Very rewarding.
Absolutely. I think for let's say the younger adults, I think it's really about exposure. So if they are getting to know to people who are part of the field, who learn how to be resourceful, who learn how to be passionate, or who learn how to work collaboratively, maybe in contrast to most of the other fields that we're talking about. I think the early exposure to arts and arts organizations are quite key. So for instance, for us, we think about our internship program as an extension of our educational program. So it's not only about having some of our university students in Hong Kong coming to work with us, contribute to the project, but really meeting with the team members, meeting with the directors, so that they really have a good understanding about how a not-for-profit in Hong Kong works, how it functions, and how the team works together. So I think that type of exposure, especially through internships, it's very key to get excited, as you were saying.
Yeah, I agree. I think, well, my parents asked me, why do you want to work in the arts? And then they say, oh, just do whatever you like to do. But my question back to them is, I don't know what I like to do. So basically, you just have to try that out. So get a couple of internships before making up your mind. If you really like doing what you do, go for it. And because when you do what you like to do, creativity comes with it. And then you will become resourceful. If you don't, you get fired, right? So then you just have to become resourceful and creative and raising money and all this. And well, when I looked at it myself right now, I mean, I was trained as a lawyer, and I didn't want to become a lawyer and I want to work in the arts. And I think I'm doing pretty well, not too bad. So I think at the end of the day, if you really, truly love what you do, things will sort itself out. There's no worries. Yeah.
I think you've said it all. I think I totally agree with all of you, because during this time of COVID, I think without art, I think the world will be so much more darker. You know, we've been able to access art through, you know, whether it's digital means, and I think people are creating their own art, and I do think art is a connector. I think, and arts and culture. I mean, you know, we need that connection. We're human beings, whether we connect through organizations or we connect through, you know, museums. We connect. Yeah, we can't be in isolation. I think if nothing else, this last 2 years has proven, no matter how much of a loner, you still need people. And I think what we do, so I think this is one of my favorite part of my job, is that we connect. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about our organization in terms of working on strategies, and in fact, yesterday I think I tried it out at the press conference, which I've been thinking a lot about, you know, what we do, not just at Asia Society, but I think our organizations, at all 4 of our organizations, we provide content. We put it in context by being curators, and we connect the community and the different communities. So my 4 C's: content, context, connection, and community. And we have to do this, and especially during this time of you know, this isolation. I think the connection, the community, all of this is very important. And so I think this is how I'm going to end on. I think we're a few minutes before. Again, if no questions from the audience, I want to thank our wonderful panelists. Antony Chen, Executive Director, Arts with the Disabled Association Hong Kong. Thank you. Anthony Özge Ersoy, Public Program Leads at Asia Art Archive, and Tiffany Pinkstone, a Director of Sovereign Art Foundation and Director of Hong Kong Office of Sovereign Group. And I want to thank the 3 of you. Again, I could go on forever. This is my favorite subject, because I think what we do, I think many of you are not familiar with non-for-profits in the arts and organization. I would invite you to get to know us, because we're one of the pillars. Yes, the commercial art is really important, but I think we're also a connector. And so get to know the organization. And if you have some young people interested in internship opportunity, please talk to us. We interns really help run our organization, so without it. So see that as an extension of education. So please come and say hi to us afterward. But again, thank you all for being with us. And I want to again thank our Central for giving us this opportunity to have this discussion. Thank you. Thank you. It was fun.